Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your galactic mercenary Otaku hosts.
I am John.
And I am CC. And when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. Today on our show, we will head off into space and fight a war among the stars at the site of legendary Galactic Heroes. Then we move to a different kind of battlefield, relationships. Challenging terrain, especially if it concerns a bunch of dedicated nerds. And last but not least, we welcome back an old Full Metal favorite who needs to learn how to be equally proficient in both areas of conflict to save the love of his life. Get your gear, shoulder your rifle, and prepare to march out. We'll be right back.
They try to hit you, they try to keep you going down and out.
So, before we get into our first review, we have an impromptu improvised news segment here because there are some sad news that actually hit the anime airwaves today. John, why don't you elaborate on that?
Yeah, news broke on Thursday that apparently early Monday, the voice actor Unshō Ishizuka had passed away due to esophageal cancer. I feel like it's worth highlighting him because he had apparently, looking at the credits for Legend of the Galactic Heroes, he had a small role in there, so it's somewhat topical. But
yeah.
he's a very prolific voice actor. He's had a number of big name roles, like he was Heihachi in Tekken, Mr. Satan in Dragon Ball, our favorite Joestar in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Old Man Joseph.
Yeah, best JoJo forever.
He was Professor Oak in Pokemon, and just
Jet Black in Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, Van Hohenheim in Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah, a lot of iconic roles.
Yeah, so his tenure ran far and wide, and it's a shame. He will be very missed.
He will be missed. He was a very iconic figure in the seiyuu industry, and especially considering, when I saw the picture of his character from Dragon Ball, Mr. Satan, next to Bulma's character, longtime voice actress we've lost recently as well, Hiromi Suru, and it's just a shame. Like, we're losing some very important people, like people that we have, whose voices we heard for a long time. Everyone who has been in anime for a while has grown up with those people, even if they didn't know their faces or names, but they knew their voices. And that's it's sad to see these people go, and knowing that they will never reprise any of their iconic roles and or slip into new iconic ones. And yeah, that's a shame. And we thought it was would be appropriate to highlight one of the greats today. And rest in peace.
Indeed.
The Galactic Empire of the Golden Bomb Dynasty and the Alliance of the Free Planets have been at war for domination over the Milky Way galaxy for over 150 years. During the soon-to-be historic Battle of Astarte, a young Imperial Navy High Admiral and a tactical genius called Reinhard von Lohengrin devises a brilliant plan to overcome an overwhelming Alliance fleet, putting both the Old Guard on the enemies and his own side in their place. But unbeknownst to him, there is an equally gifted tactician among the ranks of the Alliance soldiers, Commodore Yang Wen-li. On the brink of a total victory for the Empire, Yang manages to rally the remaining Allied ships and forces von Lohengrin into a stalemate that ends with both fleets departing from the battlefield. But from that moment on, both men's destinies are intertwined, because their ambition and the forces pulling the strings in the shadows will drive those two heroes to face each other on future battlefields in this galactic war. So yeah, this is basically the summary of the first 2 episodes for Legend of the Galactic Heroes, Die Neue These. So I haven't given too much away, I think, except for the outcome of that first battle. And starting from the 3rd episode, we get like this nice recap of the history of, that war. So yeah, this series is based on the novel series Legend of the Galactic Heroes, or Ginga Eiyu Densetsu, by Yoshiki Tanaka. And the novel series contains 10 volumes that were published between 1982 and 1987. There are also 4 volumes of side stories. There have been several different adaptations into manga and anime form. The most well-known probably being an OVA series that ran from 1988 to 1997 for a whopping 110 episodes. And that one covered all the material from the 10 volumes of the novels.
I wonder if you can really call it just an OVA at that point, because goddamn.
Yeah, I know. This is like something that would be more of a TV series length, but it was released on, video or DVD only. So there you go. Technically, it's an OVA. And yeah, just as a disclaimer, I have not seen or read any of those early adaptations. So I am a total noob when it comes to Legend of the Galactic Heroes. So that you are aware, if you want to have some more proficient summary and talk about this particular series, maybe check out, I don't know, I think Anime World Order did an episode on that. At least they talked a lot about that show before. Yeah, in general, that's a pretty good source for more knowledgeable anime reviews than from us. But still, now, this new adaptation we're going to talk about today got 12 episodes for its first season, and will continue next year with 3 movies that basically will contain 4 episodes of the second season, like each. I assume we will get a TV cut after the movies are out, like we did with Space Battleship Yamato 2199. They did that the same there, and doing it again for 2299, or whatever the secret series is called, 2259, I don't know.
I think you're right. It was 22.90. Yeah, I think that sounds right.
All right. And this series is produced by Production IG. And as expected from Production IG, the animation in this is pretty damn great. We got a lot of well-animated, sharp character models and nice scenery shots. And most importantly for this kind of story and setting, the space battles are breathtaking. Production IG know how to handle their CG, so the amount of ships on screen in each confrontation is downright ridiculous. And these are some really good-looking CG ships. Like, it's not cheap, shit. These are really well-designed, cool-looking giant battleships. Feel like they have a lot of weight to them and, have neat design aspects to them. All that stuff looks really cool. Just the general machinery in this show. Now, since this is leaning towards classic naval battle as a source material, the action can seem a bit distant at times. There is some close-quarter dogfighting in a few scenes in 1 or 2 episodes, but generally, this is about people standing on the bridge of a giant fucking spaceship and yelling "Fire!" or "Feuer" in case of the Empire. That might not sound really intense or interesting, but the focus of the battles in the show is more on the tactical maneuvering than breathtaking action choreography. And for what it's worth, when all the ships are unleashing everything they have at each other, it's a sight to behold, especially on a big TV screen, in my opinion. It's really good-looking stuff. The director is Shunsuke Tada, who, among many other things, directed all 3 seasons of Kuroko's Basketball, which is one of my favorite sports anime to date. At least it's up there. Yeah, was also done by Production IG. And the music is done by Shin Hashimoto, who previously worked on Inazuma 11, and the other one who worked on this music is Yasuhisa Inoue, who has worked on the Final Fantasy XV Brotherhood web series. The score is mostly classical, like this triumphant symphony orchestra style battle fanfare and stuff like that. So yeah, it fits the style of the show and the design aesthetics, and especially it works especially well during the battle scenes. A lot of bravado in those, and I guess the music works very well in that regard. So yeah, let's talk about the cast and story. First off, this show has a ridiculously giant cast, like literal name overkill. Like there's a new character with a new name on screen pretty much in any given scene. And it's good, necessary that there are subtitles shown with the name of the person talking every time, the person is shown for the first time in that episode. Otherwise, you would be completely lost. And even then, it's hard to keep track on the first watch. I think it's easier in the books where you read the talking character's name many times over. At least that's how I experienced from Game of Thrones, for example. I had read the books before watching the show, and for me it was easy to keep track of the cast and names because I already knew them, got familiar with them, and got to read the names over and over again when they were talking in the books. But my friends who only watched the TV show had really trouble remembering all the characters' names. Like, because there were so many characters in that cast. And it's the same for this show, in my opinion. I mean, it helped, the subtitles helped, and like I said, they're necessary in my opinion. It's just too hard to keep track of everyone. And I mean, not everyone is important, but still, it's, nice to remember the names, and there are just so damn many of them. So,
Is it because they're building off of like the old cast as well, or?
I mean, it's a remake. It's not a sequel. So.
I didn't. I thought it was a sequel. My bad.
No. It's a remake, and it's the same cast. I don't know if they switched up some gender roles here and there. Because, it's an old military novel, and I was surprised to see even, women in there. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how prevalent they were in the old series. But I'll get to that later, too. But yeah, the old cast was already... I heard that a lot already about the old show, that it's a ginormous cast, and, the old show had subtitles as well for the names, and that was very important, and a lot of people who, we're talking about this remake before it came out. We're saying like, okay, one of the most important things for this remake, I hope they put subtitles for the character names in there, because goddamn, that's integral, and they did. So that's good. But let's focus on the two main players first. Reinhard von Lohengram, formerly Reinhard von Müse, grew up as a lower class noble in the Empire. And as a child, he moves in next door to a commoner boy called Siegfried Kircheis. And those two become best friends pretty much instantly. Form a real connection. Both Reinhard and Siegfried adore Reinhard's big sister Anne-Rose. And when their deadbeat dad basically sells Anne-Rose off to the reigning emperor, or Kaiser, Friedrich IV, Reinhard decides to join a cadet school and rise through the ranks of the military to gain more and more influence and power to eventually overthrow the Kaiser and take back his sister from him. And since Siegfried promised Anne-Rose to always watch over her brother, he follows Reinhard over, on every step of his way to power. And those two are just a cool team and surprisingly sympathetic, both in regards to their motivation and their behavior. Reinhard is kind of arrogant at times, but he has the skills to back up that attitude. It's not like he's just, a loudmouth that's just bragging or something like that. He just knows what he's capable of, and he has a grudge against people who are capable of nothing but pretend to be. So, yeah. So in the beginning, that attitude makes him clash with a lot of the other admirals on the Imperial fleet, because they consider him a loudmouth upstart who only came into his position because his sister is sought after by the Kaiser. Even after being promoted to Imperial Fleet Admiral at age 20 in episode 3, he still has to tolerate their shit. He wins over more and more people with his genius-level tactical skills and maneuvering on and off the battlefield, though. And like I said, Siegfried is always with him, and those characters just come across as like really good friends. That flashback episode to their youth helps a lot to establish that relationship and that level of trust those two share. And it feels really earnest and nice. And to see two, leading characters in such a military drama have this kind of friendship and trust establishes a good level of sympathy for these characters. It feels relatable. And that's what I really liked about those two. But yeah, talking about characters who are not taken seriously in the beginning brings us to the other big player in this story, which is Yang Wen-li, who kind of is in the same place as Reinhardt when we meet him for the first time in the show. His passive plans are not taken seriously by his superiors, and only after he saves the remains of his fleet from like complete subjugation and / or destruction, some higher ranked people in the military are willing to take his opinions and tactics into consideration. Yeah, so they are kind of at the same point when they meet each other, like Reinhardt and Yang. But when compared to Reinhardt, even though they are in comparable situations right now and are probably on an equal level of skill and intelligence, they are completely different people otherwise. For starters, Yang had a completely different upbringing. He wasn't a noble. He lived most of his life on a spaceship until the age of 16 because his dad was a trader. He's shown reading a lot. He's a history buff. In fact, he only had passing grades in anything but military history. And over the course of the show, it becomes clear that he is only fighting in this war to end it. Not necessarily with a victory, but maneuvering the alliance of free planets into a position where they have enough pull to negotiate for peace with the Empire on equal terms, so that all parties are happy with that outcome. And Reinhardt, on the other hand, wants to use the war to ultimately, like I said, gain power and overthrow the Kaiser, the Emperor, and the whole Golden Baum dynasty. First and foremost, to get back his sister, but also because he deems it a corrupt, worthless system populated by incompetent fools who did not earn their position of power. So, yeah, different characters, both sympathetic in a way, but, coming from completely different angles and, having their different reasons for fighting in this war. And one being, obviously better than the other in that regard, because one is more egoistic, kinda, and the other one is more altruistic. And as egoistic as Reinhardt's motives are, it's kind of understandable that he feels such animosity towards the Golden Baum dynasty, because it's not a good place to be. I mean, the Galactic Empire is very German, but think of it more like World War I Germany or Prussia than World War II. It's not that bad. Well, except for the guy who actually created the empire, Rudolf Goldenbaum. He is, the founder of the Golden Baum dynasty. He is pretty Hitler-esque, like big into eugenics and the survival of only the superior genes and all that shit. And even though he is dead at this point of the story, he is still the inciting force behind a lot of the political stuff and character motivations in the show, be it characters wanting, to destroy his legacy, or people being inspired by him, or his, seeking the same kind level of power or stuff like that. So he's a ever-present force in this show just because of his history and what he has created. On the other hand, on the other side, we have the Free Alliance of Planets, which is very international. You think of it maybe like, I don't know, the rest of the world, maybe.
I'm looking at a list of character names on Anime News Network, and it seems like there is a very long list of mixed nationalities among this crew, going off of names alone.
Definitely. It was founded originally by a bunch of rebels who escaped the clutches of the Empire and founded, their own nation, basically. And that expanded and expanded. And, they're comprised of all kinds of people of different races, ethnicities, and societal standing and everything. And it's a democracy, while the Empire is an autocracy. And so very different nations clashing here with different ideals. However, and this is probably what I like most about this show, they are also not, there are no clear good or bad guys in this conflict, really. The Alliance, just like the Empire, is filled with warmongering opportunists that want to keep the war going to further their own political gain or profit. I mean, the Empire is like I said, autocracy, and a lot of the common people are starving while the nobles shower themselves in gold, so to speak. But the Alliance, for example, is also very willing to silence people who speak out against the war effort by force. And, another example is this program in the Alliance which grooms war orphans to become soldiers as well, to supply the undying demand for manpower in the war. And I think that's this kind of quote-unquote charity is super sinister and fucked up. And, and Young takes part in that, which sounds really bad at, first glance, but, he adopts a young boy named Julian Mintz and is promised that his loans are for studying and for everything are forgiven if Julian later joins the military. But, as we later learn, Young doesn't really care about that incentive at all. And in fact, his motive is to end the war before Julian is old enough to join the military. Because he wants for him to have a peaceful life and not be integrated into the system. So, as you have guessed by now, Young is a really good guy.
That's cool.
Yeah. But like I said, all the parties in this conflict are pretty grayscaled. Yes, you got a few good guys on both sides, probably more on the Alliance side than on the Empire, but also a bunch of assholes at every corner, which, is very close to reality in most conflicts we have in our society today. So
yeah,
all of that rings very true. And I'm glad that the show, doesn't take the easy route and give us a, clear good guy and clear bad guy here. There's also a third party in the form of the autonomous Dominion of Fazan, which is this independent planet, which is probably led by the biggest shitbag in the show, Rubinsky. He's the typical warmongering profiteer who considers the war his own personal game and the other players his puppets who only exist to provide entertainment and help him amass wealth and power, for himself. And, they're all disposable. And that is also very close to a lot of people in our world, I believe. So, again, many parallels. And, like I said before, the most relatable character in all of this is definitely Young. Not just because of his motivation, but because he's such a sympathetic and chill dude. He's really laid back and, like I mentioned before, too passive for a lot of people, for a lot of superiors. A lot of people in the beginning say, "Oh no, you are a coward," or "Why pull back now?" and stuff like that. And there's always a reason for doing that. Young only he attacks if he needs to, and if it makes the most sense. But if he finds a way, a tactical pullback, a retreat makes the most sense at this point, and he can save the most lives with that, he will do that instead. A lot of people just don't see eye to eye with him in that regard. But he's just a cool dude. He's funny. He's a bit goofy here and there, a bit clumsy. But he just comes across as a genuinely good, sober view on life and the war stuff. And he felt very, very relatable. But like I said, I also kind of like Reinhard and Siegfried, which I didn't expect, which makes the impending confrontation or confrontations between Reinhard and Young pretty harrowing. Because I hope they all make it out alive somehow, and I'm not sure that's gonna happen. I haven't read up on the series. I don't want to see any spoilers or anything, but I don't know if this is the kind of story where we will get a happy end. It feels too realistic for that in a lot of points. So I don't know, but maybe we'll get an ending where they manage to improve the lives of the people in their respective nations on the way. I don't know. We'll see. I hope we'll get a good ending at this somewhere in there. So since this is based on an older military novel, like I mentioned before, 99% of the cast are men. So it's quite a sausage fest. At least Young's adjutant Frederica and his friend Jessica, who also becomes an important political figure during the course of the show, mix things up a bit. But otherwise, it's a lot of dudes. On the side of the Empire, a lot of pretty boys, which plays to a specific crowd, I assume. But aside from that, a lot of old men. Stupid old men.
Hold on. Stupid old men in politics?
Yeah.
It can't be.
I got some small stray character observations regarding some of the side characters written down here. there's this character on the Empire side called Captain Paul von Oberstein. He came across to be like this obvious villain because he has like this really, I don't know, sinister look to him in a way. And it feels like he has his own agenda, but he might be a red herring. He also is really opposed to the Empire and wants to like overthrow the Golden Bomb dynasty. But, you know, he keeps you wondering if he has, you know, some other ulterior motives. So I'm interested to see where he goes in this story. And there's also, and I posted this to Twitter last night, there's a guy called Commander Sithole or Sithole. And, you know, that's
an
just
unfortunate name.
That's just an unfortunate last name. And I'm not making fun of the name itself. It's a legit name in real life. The problem is, you know, the Japanese in their kana syllable alphabet don't have a C. They only have a she. So you can imagine how Sithole is pronounced in Japanese. And yeah, they do that every time he's on screen, and I'm laughing my ass off every time. So I'm really sorry, but yeah, that's a good thing that happens on a regular basis. It's good stuff. And if I wouldn't know any better, and I wonder if he was in the old show or he was the same in the old show. There's this admiral dude who throws a hissy fit every time someone disagrees with him, even going so far as having stroke-like symptoms because of the amount of frustration and anger he experiences when someone questions his command. He sounds like a president we know, doesn't he? I mean, he doesn't look like Trump, but one of the cooler admirals calls him a man with the mentality of a child. And boy, does that sound familiar.
It's too real.
I mean, we had some contemporary political commentary in Inuyashiki. They actually put Trump in there.
They put him in Akiba's trip too, him and Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, so I wonder. I mean, you know, he's definitely not looking like him, but he is that character kinda. So I wonder. And I wonder if he will reappear in the story. He has kind of a funny accent, and he's a real shitbag. There are a lot of shitbags in this show. Not only the old people, but there are some young shitbags too. But yeah, I really like the first season of Legend of the Galactic Heroes, Die Neue These. Two pretty cool main characters, and an interesting kind of sobering look on war itself. I mean, the show is very intent to let us know that war really sucks. Mostly using Young as the voice of reason here, and I appreciated that. Of course, there's some military fetish imagery going around as well, like when all the ships of the Empire go into battle, it's like, oh, look at these beautiful instruments of mass destruction taking off. Aren't they pretty? But yeah, at least the series doesn't shy away from emphasizing that this ongoing conflict is kind of bullshit, and people on both sides are to blame. So yeah, that's good, I guess. And I mean, we have seen some of that same war sucks, but hey, these fights look pretty awesome, dynamic in a lot of shows before. For example, in pretty much all of Gundam. Some series pulling it off better than others, and I think this show is definitely one of the good ones in that regard. So yeah, if you don't mind your sci-fi having a lot of men sitting around talking about politics and war tactics and also yelling fire or ute a lot, give this one a chance. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the next season.
Well, compared to the letting slip the dogs of space war, I feel like the next show isn't quite as dense. Which, as a side note, is one of the reasons I never really never really delved into Legend of the Galactic Heroes, because, like you said before, I didn't realize this was a reboot and not a sequel. So, but yeah, I mean, an OVA that spans what? How long did you say? 9, 10, 11 years?
Yeah. 110 episodes. So it's 4 seasons, I believe, if you would put it in TV terms. I think it's four OVA series.
Well, maybe someday.
The remake just started, so maybe this is a good point, and you still got some time before the second season is out. I mean, they're gonna bring the movies to theaters first, and
It's true.
so yeah, we'll see. And I wonder if they go through this faster. But anyway,
Possibly.
over to your show.
Yes. So the next show on the docket is Wotakoi. Love is Hard for Otaku. The show is all about 26-year-old Narumi Momose, and she is a diehard fujoshi who just recently switched jobs in hope of being able to play off an image of being a perfect, beautiful young lady. However, her hopes are dashed to bits when she reunites with her middle school buddy Hirotaka Nifuji, who is an avid gamer and knows all of her darkest, deepest secrets, and almost accidentally lets it slip when on the day that she's hired. Oops. The two of them reconnect over drinks because what else are you gonna do? Gotta get drunk.
Of course.
They reconnect over drinks, and Hirotaka promises he won't go too deep into Narumi's secrets more than he already has on accident. Commenting on how love is tough for people who are nerdy because they're, abnormal and weird. Although I feel like in at least Western culture that the line and that definition is starting to change. But, depends on where you're living, where you're brought up, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So after Narumi's second day at work, she promises to meet Hirotaka that evening for drinks, but is unable to finish her work on time, so he stays behind and waits for her. What a nice guy. As they drink, Hirotaka asks Narumi out, telling her if that they date, she won't have to worry about hiding her nerdness, and also to help her out with Monster Hunter. So, excited by this proposition, Narumi accepts, and they awkwardly enter into a relationship. It's funny because I say not Monster Hunter, and it's Monster Hunter. It is the actual real deal.
Sponsored by Capcom.
that does come up in the ending credits several times. Mm-hmm. Which is an interesting point I think I'll throw out there first and foremost. There are a lot of references to real-world intellectual properties in this show, and unlike other series, it doesn't just feel like product placement. It feels a bit more,
substantial.
Yeah, because granted, we've had other shows that have done the same sort of thing, but it's felt kind of shoehorned in a lot of these, like in gamers. And there was that goofy Street Fighter episode in Akiba's Trip, but it doesn't feel like it's too in your face, because the first time we see Hirotaka playing Monster Hunter Double Cross on a not Nintendo Switch, it's just sort of like, oh, okay, that's happening. This is a thing. Sure, it's fine. This show is very pleasant, I feel. It sort of sets its premise, up very, very quickly and very early, and then the rest of the show is more about becoming comfortable in a relationship than it is anything else. And it's reflected very often in the characters, because this show is, obviously about Narumi and Hirotaka, but they also have a pair of coworkers, Hanako and Taro. And, they're basically the same sort of dynamic, because they're both super nerds. Hanako is super into BL stuff.
Mm-hmm. As you would expect.
And Taro is, I don't remember if they call it out by name, but it seems like he's a big fan of Cardcaptor Sakura, or, at least the equivalent that they throw out there.
Something magical girl show, something.
Basically, yeah. And they sort of showed that both pairs trying to feel each other out and figure, how do we how do we proceed? How do we behave around each other? Because, Narumi says that in her previous relationship, once she was found out, the jig was up, and it was like, well, all right, I guess that's the end of that relationship, which, I think that's definitely something to be said about, acceptance of your partner's chosen hobbies. It's, again, a big sort of focus on something like that in this show, and as well as in other shows, like in the one I always fall back on in recent times is Recovery of an MMO Junkie.
Yeah, it sounds kind of comparable to that.
Yeah, definitely.
It sounds like this is a show that, starts where a lot of romantic comedy anime end.
Yeah, and I mean there was a show once upon a time called Mysterious Girlfriend X that sort of started off this way, albeit a bit weirder, and it was
So I've heard.
Yeah, it was strange. I think I watched maybe 2 episodes of that back when it was originally airing, and I was like, you know what, I'm good. Because it was trying to be intentionally weird and strange, not to the point of like where in this show it's like, oh, there's awkwardness in the relationship, and like in a mature person's relationship or friendship, you talk it out. Maybe it doesn't always happen immediately like it did in Recovery of an MMO Junkie, because the characters in that show were slightly older than the characters in this show, so I think they cut across pretty readily that hey, we're older, why do we have to deal with stupid bullshit, as opposed to something like gamers dragging it out for 5, 6, 7 episodes at a time, because aren't misunderstandings wacky and hilarious? No, they're not. And I don't know how many times I'm going to beat this dead horse, but it's going to keep coming up. I'm sorry, everybody.
Don't be sorry. The show deserves it.
You're not wrong.
Anyway, yeah, this sounds like this is more like something that I would want from, not necessarily from every romantic comedy anime, but something that first and foremost is more catered towards my age group, at least more than having a bunch of teenagers on screen, and 26 is already closer. I mean, still years away, but
it's at least in a relatively close bracket.
Yes, exactly. So it feels more relatable automatically, and the relationship itself of the nerd aspect aside, feels much more realistic, and it's also very interesting. So many shows seem to be afraid that once they reach that point of commitment, where 2 characters are together, there are no more interesting stories to tell, and no more interesting developments to have, and conversations and discussion and whatever, character development. And once they get to that point, they do their darndest to break these establishments up again, destroy them in a way, and go back to enforce, artificial drama or something like that. The CW shows do that a lot. They're basically, that's their modus operandi. I don't know what to do with these characters anymore. They have been together so long. Where's the drama? Where's the fire? We need to put some shit in there to make them hate each other or something. And yeah, and anime usually just doesn't even like get to that point.
I'd say the end point is usually, oh, we're dating the end.
Yeah,
oh,
if it gets to that, you know, sometimes we get maybe a moment of hand holding at the end of a show, and that's the level of commitment that those shows deal in. But you know, and this sounds like this is going a lot further, and thus it's automatically more interesting to me. Just in terms of what are they gonna do with that? What's the comedy they derive from that? What are the situations that these people get into? Because it's automatically those people will be in different situations than all, you know, the high school romantic comedy stuff that we have been bombarded with. at this point. So I wonder, what is like what was like the best kind of comedic situation in that show that, or maybe the best running joke or whatever that you came across?
I don't know if there really was like any running jokes. There was just sort of, the sort of typical needling at each other because, it's what nerds do. Oh man, you like that thing? Yo, shut up, man. That sort of stuff. But this show is also less about that and more about coming to understandings, because it's kind of it comes out where Hirotaka utters something along the lines that maybe Hanako is more my type, and that sort of leads Narumi down this road like, wait, what am I doing wrong? That sort of thing. And when they have to eventually come to grips with that, and they talk it out and they figure it out, and that makes them feel more like a real actual relationship. And like between Hanako and Taro, like Hanako, like I said, is super into the BL stuff, but Taro's like, man, I can't deal with any of that shit. And when eventually
in that voice,
pretty close.
In Japanese.
He's voiced by Sugita, so you can imagine how he sounds. But eventually he comes to a point where Hanako lends him some of her manga, and he starts to read it, and he's like, you know what? It's still not my thing, but it's not what I thought it was. So it's like, hey, yeah. And I think that's
opening perspectives.
That is a big part of any hobby. Sharing that you like it, hopefully getting other people on board, and if they don't, then at least you had the experience, and that's fine. So I think that is, there are some jokey moments throughout because, what else would a rom-com be without a laugh every once in a while? But
the focus is more on the character and relationship development.
Right.
That's cool. Like, I'm genuinely, intrigued at this point. I don't feel like that happens too often, at least the shows that cross our way.
Yeah, I mean, this, I feel like that was, that's what this show was all about, just being #relatable. But no, that really is what I took away from it. And I was like, oh, there's so many rom-coms that do all sorts of dumb, stupid stuff, like we've said before. But, this stuff, the ones like these that are playing to an older audience are the ones that feel more grounded and more interesting to me. So, that's great. And that's what I really like this show a lot. If I have to say one thing that I really didn't like, it was animated by A1.
Okay.
And the show didn't look bad, but there were some shortcuts that were a little rough. But if you could put that sort of stuff aside, it was a great show. It was originally created by a mangaka that goes by the name Fujita, and I guess the manga is still running, so who knows, maybe there'll be more of the show in the future. That'd be cool. I'd be fine with that. If you're looking for something that, it is along the lines of something like MMO Junkie, and is, a bit more laid back and easier to get on the level with if you're around our age bracket. That is, if you're younger, maybe you'll still want your goofy, constant misunderstandings, and I don't know why, but that, you know what? You do you, man or girl. Whatever you may identify as. But Wotakoi is just really great. It's got, great characters, and the relationships that sort of spring forth between the four main characters are really interesting and well written and conveyed, and it's worth your time. It's definitely worth watching and enjoying.
Sosuke Sagara is a young soldier working for the mercenary organization Mithril. Making use of the so-called black technology, technical knowledge and equipment of unknown origin, years ahead of its time, Mithril intervenes in international conflicts to perform peacekeeping and rescue missions. Besides a giant spaceship-esque submarine called the Tuatha de Danann, they also have the most advanced models of arm slaves, which are highly versatile bipedal mechs. Sosuke, growing up as a child soldier in the war-torn country of Magistan, has only known the military life. So his world gets turned upside down when he and his two teammates, Melissa Mao and Kurz Weber, get tasked with protecting the young high school girl Kaname Chidori, who is believed to be targeted by an unknown terrorist organization because she is one of the Whispered. The Whispered are people who have subconscious understanding of black technology and are potentially able to unearth and decipher its deeper mysteries and potential for powerful weapons. To adequately protect Kaname, Sosuke enrolls at the same high school as her without having the faintest idea how the life of a normal high school student differs from the life of a soldier. This, of course, leads to a lot of comedic misunderstandings, slapstick, and an unlikely developing romantic relationship between the soldier and the girl he's trying to protect. A relationship that is tested over and over, not only by Sosuke's thick-headedness, but also by the dangerous people working in the shadows to make Kaname and her knowledge their own. So yeah, Full Metal Panic is based on a light novel series written by Shoji Gato, who also scripted, I think, most of the anime adaptation. I'm not sure, at least he did for this new season. It is comprised, the light novel series is comprised of 23 volumes that were published between 1998 and 2011. It got a couple of manga adaptations, and the first season of this anime was released in 2003. And yes, you heard right, its first season, because unlike Legend of the Galactic Heroes, Full Metal Panic Invisible Victory is technically the fourth anime season to be adapted from the light novel series. It's a sequel. Invisible Victory, abbreviated, is the Roman numeral 4, so you know, it's in the title.
I noticed that sometime after they revealed the name, and I was like, shut up.
But yeah, this is kind of crazy because the last season of FMP we got ended in 2005, so it has been 13 years, and now we're getting a sequel instead of a remake, which is bananas to me. Because it makes you wonder how many people still remember that show. I mean, it was pretty popular back in the day, if I remember correctly. I mean, you haven't watched it, I think.
I watched Fumofu.
Yeah.
I probably should have made the time to watch some of the other stuff, but I mean, I have one friend in particular, and she was like over the damn moon when they announced Invisible Victory. So the audience is definitely still there.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, you know, I just wonder how broad this, especially in Japan, like it all considering how good would it sell on Blu-ray and shit like that. So I don't know. I don't know how the fan base in Japan is holding up there. But yeah, I'm not surprised Fumofu is a season you watched because that is totally up your alley. Considering very late sequels, like years after, we recently got a sequel to Blade Runner, so everything goes, I guess. Yeah. Anywho, I love Full Metal Panic, and to explain why, we have to go back to the first season before we talk about this new one. So the first series was produced by Studio Gonzo, which we have mentioned several times before.
Mm-hmm. Not always in the most flattering of terms.
Yeah, exactly. You know, they're kind of infamous for putting out shows that decline in quality pretty quickly after their first couple of episodes. But you know, I kind of want to strike a blow for them this time around because first, come on, Puro and Toei and A1 to an extent kind of do the same thing where they put out 1 in 20 episodes that look really good, and you know, Puro and Toei especially, like, holy shit, One Piece, man. Oh god, it's such a shame. Anyway, and second, Gonzo has done a lot of good shows as well. Gankutsu, Last Exile, Welcome to the NHK, to name only a few. And well, this one. Yes, animation quality-wise, this is what you would expect. Like, the first season is kind of bare bones for most of its runtime, but it looks good when it needs to. And the hand-drawn arm slaves still look better than most CG mechs we see these days, in my opinion. The action scenes are, you know, sometimes a bit stilted, sometimes a bit hokey, but the important fights look really good, really dramatic. There are a lot of good camera angles and everything, and I like the look of the show. It maybe is a bit of this like early 2000 Digipaint look. It's It's not too flattering these days, but I think it holds up rather well. When I revisited recently, I was surprised at how good the show still looks. Better than for Gonzo show and better. I expected it to look worse. I was like, man, my nostalgia is probably like making this look better than it did. And then I watched it and was like, no, this is still pretty alright. Pretty good stuff. So yeah, that's nice. But what is really good about the first season of MPMP is the balance between comedy and thrilling action. And that's what drew me into the show in the first place. And what made me so excited to see a sequel for this series being announced after it being off the air for such a long time. So, first of all, the cast of FMP is fantastic, and the comedy would work without them. We got Sosuke, who is this ultra-capable, kind of Superman soldier, but he's super sympathetic, also kind of stern and no nonsense. You know, he's a military guy. Who has only known that for most of his life. And thus he takes every assignment, no matter how small, even recycling the garbage, incredibly seriously. He's also so focused on protecting Kaname from harm and fulfilling his mission that he is responsible for most of the dumb shit happening in the show and Kaname's mental breakdowns. But yeah, he's just, he's so earnest. Like, everyone asks him certain questions and he, answers them truthfully, and everybody thinks he's joking, like when he talks in detail about how to take down an armed assailant or something like that, or what what magazines is interested in, and he lists out all these military magazines and hardcore military novels and stuff like that, and strategy shit. And, it's just, he's like totally unable to read the room and totally unaware of the impression he makes on other people. And, in another series that maybe would lead to frustrating stuff or something like that. And I mentioned the misunderstandings, which piss me off in a lot of other shows. But in this is more like, those lead more to like short-lived slapstick humor. And it's not like this kind of misunderstandings where it's like, okay, these misunderstandings get in the way of the relationship or make people get constantly angry at each other. It's mostly used for, for a short comedic bit, and after that, the characters go back to their old selves, and they still grow closer to each other. It's not like this is like a constant thing that keeps them apart. It's just, used as a comedic bit because it fits that character, because that's how he would behave, because he's that kind of character. And the other people in his life have to deal with that. So yeah, that's good stuff. That's funny, and I can deal with these kind of misunderstandings that are just used for a bit of slapstick humor here and there, and they're never overbearing in my opinion. I haven't rewatched Fomofu, so I don't know how much that is played up there because it's just comedy. But I felt like in this first season it worked really well. And yeah, speaking of Kaname, she's a very sympathetic female lead. She's clever, she's funny, she doesn't mince her word, she's very forward, she knows how to hold her own in dangerous situations, and her comedy dynamic with Sosuke is fantastic. She tends to be a bit of a damsel in distress when it comes to plot development. I mean, like I said, she still knows to hold her own as long as it's appropriate. I mean, when she has like a bunch of soldiers with guns pointed at her, of course she can't do anything, right? But aside from that, when she's in a situation where it makes sense for her, she could take that guy or whatever, she does. And that's cool. Not having the character just being rescued by Sosuke all the time. That happens a lot. Don't get me wrong. It's that kind of story. But still, she's not like a total damsel, and I appreciated that. And character-wise, not at all. So there you go. And pretty much all of her scenes with Sosuke are gold. I just like the dynamic between those two characters. First, like, completely not getting each other, and then, slowly growing attached to each other due the trials and the hardships and everything, and the dangerous situations, and, growing a fondness, and then slowly but surely developing a real, relationships and caring for each other and becoming a couple, basically. So yeah, I didn't expect the show to go that far. And I mean, it doesn't, it doesn't do too much with that, just, because the plot doesn't let it, because there's just, from a certain point onwards, there's not enough downtime to have, for these characters to have a normal life anymore. But still, I appreciated the development between those two. Yeah, other characters we have that are great. Melissa, who is like this kind of loudmouth big sister type, who is basically the squad leader, and yeah, she's great. Kurtz is the funny, pervy dirtbag, but deep down he's a good guy too, and he's very reliable when it counts. He's also a badass sniper, that also helps. But yeah, the other probably most important role besides Sosuke and Kaname is Teletha Testarossa. And for the longest time, I thought her name was Teresa. Teresa, Teresa, because that sounds more like a real name. But
I mean, yeah, that would make sense, but
Yeah. I don't know if it's a translation but that her name is spelled Teletha officially, so that's what we're going with. So, all right. So she is the captain and creator of that giant submarine I mentioned earlier, the Tuatha De Danann. She's very young, considering her position pretty damn clumsy, but she's also incredibly intelligent, and seeing her become more and more of a capable leader throughout the entire series is one of the coolest aspects of the show. She's pretty badass, like in more ways than one. And yeah, I really like her character. Of course, there's kind of a love triangle in the beginning because she has the hots for Sosuke, but they don't really linger on that for too long or turn this into a source for unnecessary drama. There's one throwaway gag, and that gets also resolved pretty quickly and is not dragged out. That is like in the course of, I don't know, 1 minute. It's just this one joke where Teletha, fucks around with Kaname and Sosuke, and then it's resolved and they all become friends and everything. So that's super fine. That's like, yes, okay, I can deal with with shitty misunderstandings if they're played out like that. Thank you very much, Full Metal Panic. You've done it right. So yeah. But like I said, Teletha is a great character, and I like the relationship she develops with Sosuke and with Kaname. And yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Just the whole cast in this show is super sympathetic, and yeah, I learned to care for each of them. And like I said, the comedy in the show is great. And when I went back to rewatch the first two main seasons, I was surprised how well they pulled off the timing and impact for most of the jokes in this first season. The balance between the comedy and the action, because the comedy is not the only good thing about FMP. There are a lot of great action beats. The focus is, of course, on Sosuke, because he is the most capable fighter ever. But every character gets a moment in the spotlight and a chance to show what he or she got. And there's some legit thrilling and even really dark moments as well. Most of them related to the main villain of the first season, Garon, who is just a scary, psychopathic, murderous asshole, and on the same level as Sosuke when it comes to fighting prowess. So he's a force to be reckoned with. He's really, really dangerous. And I liked him as a character because he was just a good villain. And he grinds Sosuke's gears a lot. And yeah, they have a good dynamic too, and a good history. And yeah, I really liked the first season. And after that ended in 2002, we got a comedy semi-spin-off that you mentioned earlier called Full Metal Panic Fomufu in 2003, which doesn't continue the main plot, but has probably some of the best comedic bits in the whole show, if I remember correctly. Like I said, I haven't watched that for, to fresh up my memory of the show because it has no plot beats in it. But I remember laughing a lot at that show. And yeah, so I don't know, how much do you remember from it?
I mean, I remember sort of bits and pieces, very fragmented. Like, what was the name of the mascot character that he was wearing the suit of?
Bone-Takun, I think.
Yeah, Bone-Takun.
Bone-Takun, yes.
And I remember a lot of hijinks with that and a shotgun loaded with rubber bullets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely good stuff. And I will eventually go back and rewatch that too. I was trying to get through the plot as fast as possible, so that's why I skipped it this time. But it's definitely recommended if you are in the mood for, just the comedy parts of Full Metal Panic, which are really strong. So yeah, after that wrapped up, we got our last season, at least until now, called Full Metal Panic: The Second Raid in 2005. And both Fomufu and Second Raid were produced not by Gonzo, but by KyoAni. So you can imagine the jump up in quality and the whiplash watching the first season and those other two back to back. Second Raid looks so goddamn good. It's amazing. And the story is mostly serious in Second Raid. There are a few comedic bits here and there, but most of this is about the secret terrorist organization starting to emerge from the shadows and preparing to make some big moves. And Sosuke starting to think, differently about his life as a soldier and feeling a conflict of interest in regards to his, developing relationship with Kaname. So yeah, it's a lot more serious and focused on the drama. And I liked it. And I thought the final confrontation was really good and the villain was really good. He's crazy too, but a different kind of crazy than Goron is. He's like a total wacko, kind of a perf, definitely. And he's just, he's more funny than scary. Goron was scary. This guy's more funny, but he's, still crazy and a killer and everything. So yeah, I enjoyed this character too, and I enjoyed the rest of the cast of Second Raid. But like I said, this is coming out of the first season. If you think that trend is going to continue, it's not. You first get, a pure comedy dose with Fomufu, and then things get serious in Second Raid. And this trend continues in the newest season, which finally brings us to Invisible Victory. Because the story picks up pretty much directly where the Second Raid left off. So if you haven't watched any FMP before, you will be totally lost. This is definitely made for fans of the old show or people who are at least familiar with some of the material. And it also starts off with a bang with Amalgam, the big evil organization that has been teased all throughout the first season and first 2 seasons, and whose lieutenant Sosuke has been busy dealing with so far in the form of Garon and in season 1, and the crazy motherfucker Gates in the second season. But yeah, they finally make their big move, and everything turns to shit for Sosuke, Kaname, and Mithril as a whole. And most of the season is about Sosuke and the rest of the gang finding a way to push back against Amalgam and, rescuing people that were taken from them. There's some shocking betrayals and gruesome death scenes. And even compared to the Second Raid, this is probably the darkest season of FMP so far. And while I liked it, this is also kind of my issue with this season. Like I mentioned earlier, I really like the balance of comedic lightheartedness and serious action drama in the first season, that the first season pulled off so well. And the comedic bits and episodes don't, in the first season, don't undercut the story moments that are supposed to have some dramatic weight. The show doesn't feel like you don't have to give a shit because it's not just chuckles and hijinks in every other scene. I mean, if it did that, you could just call it Thor Ragnarok the anime. Ayo! Got him! Damn. So yeah, like I said, balance. It's important. And after the first season, they started to split it up, like I said, with Fomufu being all fun and nonsense, which is fine because it doesn't interrupt or trivialize the plot because there's none in it. And then Second Raid being mostly action drama. But in Invisible Victory, there's basically no levity whatsoever. It's all very grim, very dark, and a bit dire. I mean, I get it. The plot got to a point where splicing in comedic bits would have ruined the dramatic tension and wouldn't have made sense at that moment in the story, which I would have, if they did that, I would have liked that even less. So, yeah, I understand why the story is progressing this way and why the tone of the series is shifting more and more to a serious note. But I can't help but miss the simpler times, which I guess is in line with what the characters of this show feel at this point. So, because, boy howdy, they do go through some shit. Yeah, there is a really shocking death scene that caught me totally off guard in this season and made me really sad, which I kind of didn't expect. So yeah, brace yourself for that because this has become a really dark show. It's basically an action spy thriller drama now, with a lot of high stakes, a lot of people dying, a lot of action beats, a lot of destruction, everything. I mean, it's still wacky in some parts, but only because it's giant mechs fighting each other. So that's that. But it's gotten a lot more serious than it has been in the first season. So if you would jump from the first season directly into this one, I think you would get severe tonal whiplash. And I'm glad that Fomotho and Second Grade are in there to ease that impact a bit. At least this way, the progression feels kind of logical. Albeit maybe a bit too serious, maybe for certain people. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, still, even with this being the darkest seasons of them all, I still liked it. The plot moves at a decent pace and has some neat twists and turns and surprises. It's all still really engaging for most of its runtime, and I like to see, I just like to see those characters back and see where they were going and what was happening to them. Even some of the stuff was really bad, but I wanted to know where the story ends. I mean, I've been waiting 13 years for this story to continue, so it doesn't really matter how it continues. I just want it to continue and eventually conclude, hopefully. So yeah, I just want more. So Invisible Victory was produced by Zibek. We probably mentioned during our review of Keijo. Hey! We get to mention Keijo again. Because they did that. And they also did Shaman King and Rockman Exe, or Mega Man Battle Network. But I think the best work I've seen from them is Space Battleship Yamato 2199, which is a really good looking show on all levels.
You are forgetting their magnum opus work. And
Yeah.
that is Nyarlko.
Okay, if you say so.
Their magnum opus.
Okay. I can't attest to that. But I can attest to the quality of Space Battleship Yamato 2199 because I've watched that show 2 times. It's fantastic. If you haven't seen that, I know we haven't reviewed it because, that aired before we started the show.
I have been meaning to watch that for the longest time, and it's been sitting in the middle of my Crunchyroll queue for months now. I just got to do it.
Yeah, you really should. It's a fantastic sci-fi show. I like it to bits. I enjoyed it even more on my second run through with a friend of mine, and it's really good stuff. And it's, like I said, a really good looking show on all levels. Invisible Victory is not.
Oh no.
Much lower budget, I guess. The animation is about on the same level as the first season, the one by Gonzo. The mechs are CG now as expected, but it's good CG. No low FPS stutter bullshit in sight. A lot of cool fight and action choreography. There is a car chase in the beginning that looks a bit too barren in regards to its environments, like the tree passing by the road and everything. It looks a bit like, hey, haven't I seen this on PS2 or something? Like, hey, is this from GTA 3 or... Yeah, who knows? Oh. But aside from that, the CG is rather good. But some of the character animation is kind of hokey at points. And especially towards the back half of the season, it feels like Zebek was running out of money. Or so I thought, because apparently they were saving it up for episode 11 and 12, because those were fucking awesome. It's like a real epic final confrontation for the season. Some real fuck yeah moments and a nice send off to the next season that will hopefully come. I don't think it has been announced yet, and I don't know how successful Invisible Victory was. Like I said, I don't know if enough people remember that show to make this sequel successful. But yeah, this season might not have given me everything I wanted from a new FMP, but it came pretty damn close. I mean, all the characters are back, even mostly the same voice actors. Satsuki Yukino, who also voiced Kagome in Inuyasha as Kaname, Tomokazu Seki, who voices good old shitbag Gilgamesh and pretty much the entirety of the Fate franchise, is Sosuke, and Yukina, who also voiced C2 in Code Geass, is back as Talitha. You know, they're all back, and those are only a few names of this prolific cast.
I hear in the dub a lot of the old voice actors reprise their roles too, that's pretty cool that they were able to keep that going.
That's great. It's great that they were able to do that. I don't know, you know, that can be difficult to get cast back, and I think some voices were changed, especially for the older characters, because some of them might not be alive anymore. But you know, most of the important players are back, and you know, that's why it really feels like, hey, those 13 years weren't there. Like the second raid aired yesterday. Let's jump into the new season. It's great stuff. Like, it's, you know, like I said, it's picking up where it left off. Right, you're right.
It's like the breaks between Attack on Titan. What breaks? Yeah,
exactly. You know, the break between this and its first two seasons was even longer. So I'm glad that they managed to bring all the important players back in the voice cast. And they even brought back the same composer, Toshihiko Sashi, who also did the music for the old Hunter x Hunter show and Gundam Seed. And I'm really glad they did, because I love the soundtrack of FMP. It's this enjoyable mix of rock and orchestra, like this with some really cool, awesome, like epic hero tunes and stuff like that. One of the themes is very reminiscent of the theme from the A-Team. It's really good stuff. I love the soundtrack of FMP. And yeah, there are a lot of themes from the first season in there, and every time those like reared their head, I was like, yeah, we're back, motherfucker. And yeah, speaking of music, the OP to this show is probably my favorite this season, and will probably be a top contender for best OP of the year for me. The song "Even If" by Tamaru Yamada is really fantastic. I had to listen to it every time. I love it. And the OP is incredibly well edited from a video standpoint. It pushes all the right buttons. Really good stuff. We even got an English language version of the song, which is pretty neat, but I like the Japanese version a tad more because it feels like the singer is putting more power and emotion into that one. The ending is also great, and as a great bonus for longtime fans, they play both the OP and ED from the first season at the end of the final episode for this season, which gave me all the goosebumps, and at the right moment too. So yeah, they knew what they were doing. They knew who they were catering to. So yeah, this was a pretty good nostalgia bomb for me. I'm glad I went back and watched most of the old stuff to prepare for this season, because in my opinion it holds up really well. First season because of the balance of comedy and action, and the second season because of the animation and everything. Like I said, I haven't watched Fomofu, but I bet that holds up as well in terms of how good the comedy in that one is and the animation. So yeah, Invisible Victory itself was a bit of a mixed bag in terms of quality and what I wanted from it, considering, how few scenes of levity were in there. But overall, I'm pretty happy with it. If you think about jumping into FMP by starting with Invisible Victory, don't. Really, don't. Like I said, the previous seasons, at least the first one and second grade, are a mandatory watch, or you won't have any idea what's going on. But those are not long seasons, 124, 113 episodes. So yeah, if you can get through that pretty quickly. If you want to have some more comedy-only material, you can watch Fomofu as well. I don't know how much episodes that had.
I think it was 12 or 13.
Yeah, but since it's only side story, it's not mandatory to follow the plot. It's just a nice aside with more of the good comedy in there. So yeah, I hope we get another season, maybe with a few more laughs than this one had. I doubt it, considering how the story is progressing. But I'm fine with any more Full Metal Panic. Right now, I'm just really glad to have that show back, and I hope I'll finally get to see the end of Sosuke's and Kaname's story in the not-too-distant future. And that is a wrap on the 56th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vit.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for some interesting articles linked in our episode release posts. Follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze. We tweet regular updates and fun anime-related stuff there. Leave us comments and questions on Facebook and our YouTube channel, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Macht's gut.
See you next time, everybody. Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
A tale of 7 misfit knights battling beings from another world.
And the battle in the kitchen continues with a hefty third serving.